In the last episode, Konishi Yukinaga's first contingent landed on the south coast of Korea, crushed all opposition around Busan, and established a beachhead for the march north to Seoul. The Korean army has been unable to stop them. Korean losses are already approaching 14,000. The Korean Navy, meanwhile, still hasn't responded. The area around Busan, that falls under the Gyeongsang Left Navy, commanded by Pak Hong. Further west is the Gyeongsang Right Navy, under Commander Gyun. Between them, they have more than 200 warships. Powerful warships, armed with cannons. They're about to make their move. Pak Hong was watching from a nearby hill when Konishi Yukinaga's first contingent took Busan Fortress. He saw the Japanese breach the walls and pour inside. He saw them put Busan commander Chongpal and his garrison to the sword. He saw the destruction and he panicked. He fled back to his base and ordered his entire fleet scuttled, all his weapons destroyed, all his supplies burned, so that they wouldn't fall into Japanese hands. Then he abandoned his post and his men, and he fled inland. Further along the coast, Gyun, the commander of the Gyeongsang Right Navy, he's been holding it together up to this point, sending frantic dispatches off to Cholla Left Navy commander Shin further to the west. Then he receives the news of what Pak Hong has done, that he's sunk his own fleet. With nothing now standing between the Japanese at Busan and his own base on Koje Island, Gyun starts to pull back, further to the west, retreating to safety. Then he catches sight of a line of vessels on the horizon, hazy specks in the distance that seem to be approaching from the direction of Busan. They're actually fishing boats, but Gyun thinks they're Japanese warships. And he panics. Just like Pak Hong, he orders his entire fleet scuttled. He destroys his own weapons, and he flees. So in the first few days of the IMJIN War, the entire Gyeongsang Navy, a total of more than 200 ships, self-destructs. Korea's first line of defense is destroyed by the Koreans. Okay, so Konishi Yukinaga's first contingent has landed on Korean soil and has established a beachhead in and around Busan. Now, he's supposed to wait for Kato's second contingent and Kuroda's third to arrive. Then the three contingents will simultaneously head north on their assigned routes. That's the plan. But things don't go quite that way. First, the weather turns bad, and the second and third contingents are delayed in making the crossing from Tsushima. When they finally arrive at Busan, 5 days have passed, and Konishi is gone. He didn't wait for them. He's already on his way to Seoul. Kato Kiyomasa is furious. There's a major rivalry between him and Konishi, and he's determined to get to Seoul first. So he sets out at a blistering pace, driving his men hard up the east route. It's a race. Word has now reached Seoul that the Japanese have landed, that this invasion that Hideyoshi has been threatening, it's begun. Desperate attempts are made to throw together some kind of defense to stop them before they reach the capital. General Yi-il, he leads a small force of cavalry south and takes a stand near the town of Sangju. Konishi's first contingent sweeps it aside, kills most of Yi's men. General Shin-ip, he takes a stand a little further north outside the town of Chungju at a place called Tangumdae. He has a larger force, 8,000 men. This is the biggest Korean army, really the only army that stands between the Japanese and Seoul. This is the Koreans' last chance. Konishi and Kato's two contingents have come together at this point. The roads that they're traveling converge here, outside Chungju. Kato, amazingly, has managed to catch up. So the Japanese greatly outnumber the Koreans. But they don't march against Shinip's army together. Kato holds his forces back. He's so angry at Konishi for not waiting for him at Busan that he now holds back and lets Konishi deal with the Korean army alone, so that he'll hopefully get into trouble and that Kato will have to come to his rescue. But it doesn't happen that way. Konishi's force alone easily defeats the Koreans. When it's over, Shinip's 8,000-man army has ceased to exist. Shinip himself survived the battle, but he didn't live long. He had pledged before marching south from Seoul that he would stop the Japanese or die trying. After fleeing this catastrophic loss at Tangumdae, he stops at a river, gets off his horse, wades out into the water, and lets his armor drag him down. Kato Kiyomasa has now already forged ahead on the race to be first to Seoul. After mopping up at Tangumdae, Konishi and his first contingent set out in pursuit. Now it's Konishi who's playing catch-up. And he does. The two competing contingents cross the Han River and arrive outside the walls of Seoul on the same night. Kato's force at the city's south gate, Konishi's at the east gate. This woodblock print shows one of Konishi's men prying open a small floodgate to get inside the walls and open the main gate. Konishi's first contingent beats Kato into the city by just a few hours. By this time, the Korean king, King Sangju, he's fled, along with his government and most of Seoul's population. The capital is completely undefended, and it's burning. As the Japanese enter the city, they find the streets empty and many of the buildings in flames. The fires have been started by the Koreans themselves in the preceding hours of chaos and panic. It's anger. They're angry at King Sangju and his government for letting this catastrophe happen, and now for abandoning them. Slaves wanting to destroy government records of their servitude also likely played a part in setting these fires. Seoul fell to the Japanese on June 12, 1592. The invasion is only 3 weeks old, and already they've marched halfway up the length of Korea. They would continue on and take Pyongyang the following month, putting them just 250 kilometers from Korea's northern border on the Yalu River and China beyond. Hideyoshi's invasion of Korea is looking like a rout. It took Konishi's first contingent 20 days to march from Busan to Seoul. That's 450 kilometers in 20 days, or about 23 kilometers per day. Kato Kiyomasa's second contingent covered roughly the same distance in just 15 days, or more than 30 kilometers per day. Now, we need to stop and think about that for a minute. The Germans, at the start of World War II, when they advanced into Poland and France and Belgium, they moved at a marginally faster pace. Marginally. They had a fully mechanized army with trucks and tanks and rail lines and roads, and they moved marginally faster than the Japanese. And they called it Blitzkrieg, lightning war, because it was so fast. That the Japanese traveled nearly as fast in 1592 and over mountain passes and rough tracks, no paved roads, no rail lines. That is just incredible. This invasion army of Hideyoshi's, it was a juggernaut. It was a war machine, and it was on its way to China.